Hello, hello, and thank you so much for joining us here on Voice Uganda Radio for this special program that we have here for the next 2 hours. And we thank you so much for being aboard. We are right now broadcasting in about 35 countries. Our American audience is big and on board, so we thank you so much to our American audience. Everyone in the free world, thank you so much for staying tuned and being a part of this 2-hour program here with us today. Let me just say our co-host here today, Dr. Kiyingi, has made his announcement to run as candidate for the 2016 elections against President Museveni. Our conversation with him today I will be one of the people on the panel that will be asking the doctor some questions as we look at his new government and the way he wants to see things change and take place there in Uganda. Lawrence and Circa is the other co-chair here that will be asking questions also. So I'm going to let Lawrence come on in and say hello since we're running a little behind here. He'll do a formal introduction of the doctor, and then we'll go right on into our questions here for the doctor because I know you've all been waiting anxiously here on Voice Uganda Radio to have him on board. Lawrence, how are you?
Thank you, Madam Brenda. I'm doing well. Waiting to feed on the buffet that the doctor is going to serve us today. This is Chiwanuka Nsereko Lawrence coming to you from Voice of Uganda Radio. It's 2 hours that we are going to be running this program. I will not say much. I'll just say, for those who are not in the know, here is what is briefly Dr. Kiyingi. Dr. Kiyingi was born 60 years ago to Azalia Sebowa in the Busukuma Namulonge Wakiso district. His family is right beside the shadows of the Namulonge Agricultural Institute. He belongs to the Ndiga clan, that's the sheep clan, and for those from Uganda. Dr. Kiyingi graduated from Makerere University, Uganda in 1977 with a Bachelor of Medicine and a Bachelor of Surgery. Since then, he has worked, traveled, and studied widely around the world. He speaks several languages, including Luganda, Swahili, and English. He completed his specialist cardiology training in Sydney, Australia, where he currently works as a cardiologist consultant. He's been doing this since 1989. He specializes in general adult cardiology. He has a special interest in cardiac failure, hypertension, cardiomyopathy, ischemic heart disease, and tropical cardiology. Dr. Kiyingi, as Madam Brenda has informed you already, intends to stand for the president of Uganda in 2016. Upon his announcement that he is going to be running for the office of the president in Uganda, the Uganda regime ordered the arrest of Aisha Nakasimante, his campaign chair, and his driver, Asad Semogerere. Aisha was abducted, sexually molested, and beaten savagely while in detention. Dr. Kiyingi comes to us with a wealth of so many areas and the fields and the experience. He is very much interested in connectivity, and he also had at one time introduced the maybe premier internet business in Uganda under the names of the Hezi company. Dr. Kiyingi, you are welcome to join us today for this program. We are going to start by letting you have 10 solid minutes to talk to the people of Uganda and maybe introduce yourself deeper than I have done. Welcome.
Thank you very much. To all of you listening, I think in the USA, Canada, it is a good afternoon. In Australia, it is 6 in the morning here in Sydney. So good morning in Australia and Asia. I will remember next time to charge you for the breakfast if you wake me up so early. Don't worry. My wake-up time is usually 5 a.m. anyway, so you didn't do anything wrong. And in Africa, it's now good evening. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good day to all of you.
We are all covered.
As you've already heard, there is supposed, and I use that word very carefully, supposed to be an election next year in Uganda. We go into the logistics of this because the elections in Uganda are not what are known as elections in many countries. However, a lot has been going on, and over the years I've been approached by many people to go back to Uganda. Because of time, we don't have time to discuss the preamble to all this, but suffice it to say that I accepted to go back to Uganda and to lead the country. And this is some time back now, a few years. Now, this is not a mean task, particularly if you're trying to dislodge a dictator. Not just a dictator, but a brutal dictator like Yoweri Museveni. I had to think very carefully. And over the last year or two, I devised a means of getting on the ground in Uganda with my supporters, and we thought that under the prevailing circumstances, we should do an underground campaign, but a peaceful underground campaign, which did not break any law. And I want to emphasize that. It did not break any law. On the first of it was a very simple idea. I printed cards with the name of the organization under my name, a telephone number, and a website. And up to now, we have distributed in excess of 1.5 million business cards.
Wow.
This does not break any law. Now, these cards in Uganda, not worldwide, but in Uganda, this was done on a person-to-person basis. You meet somebody, you greet him, you talk to him, you tell him about the election, you tell him about Dr. Kiyingi. If he's agreeable, you give him a card. Now, in Uganda law now, I think if you're more than 3 people or 4 people, you need permission. Potentially, you need permission from the chief of police. So we never broke any law. There were not 3 or 4. There are 2 people. And these, in any country, pre-marketing campaigns are carried out all the time. So this could be labeled a pre-marketing campaign, announcing that I'll stand in 2016 and telling the people this is the platform we're going to use, and this platform is going to be officially registered and launched in Uganda at a particular time. Now, as you know, Museveni has spent a lot of money spying on Ugandans rather than developmental issues, and I'm sure this will come up later on. It didn't take him very long to get to know that many people are getting these cards, and probably some of the cards we gave to his people. And they started hunting down and trying to find out, how do these cards get into the country? It took them a long time, but at the end of last year, I told my people that I intended to go to Uganda either end of February or this month, March. This got into the ears of Museveni and his henchmen. They're very scared. And if you went to Kapchora, there were cards there. If you went to West Nile, there were cards there. If you went to Mbarara, his hometown, there were cards there. If you went to Bale, there were cards there. And he was baffled. He went crazy. Kaihura was almost fired for not finding out what was happening. And this is true. He was almost fired. But finally, they got to my chief mobilizer, Aisha Nakasibante, who was the one who received the cards when they got in the country. And how they got in the country is my business, and it's not for this talk show.
Exactly.
That's right. But legally got into the country. So we didn't dodge any taxes or anything. And business cards are not taxable in Uganda. So but we didn't break any law. They got her. They abducted her, they beat her up, as you've already had the introduction, sexually molested her, drafted the documents for her to sign in return for her freedom, which of course she refused. She said, look, I'm not going to sign a fake document. She's currently in Luzira, and some of you know the conditions in Luzira. Many others have been arrested, many have been killed. Her driver, up to 2 days ago, was incarcerated in one of the safe houses in Kireka and beaten without charge over 4 or 5 weeks without charge. I got a legal team and I put this on the website within the next 48 hours, which petitioned the court to say that the driver, FADDU.ORG was detained illegally. The court on Thursday evening granted an order for the release of FADDU.ORG. Now, before, that was around 4:30 p.m. And this is how Museveni works. 4:30 p.m. on Thursday, the court granted an order instructing the people in the Kireka safe house to release Asadu Semogerere. However, by the time they got to Kireka, that is within 1 hour or so, Asadu had been charged, miraculously charged, after 5 weeks in detention. Then the government charged him, and he's now in Luzira. So in order to avoid to release him, they charged him really after the order of release had been signed by a court in Kampala. So he's now been taken to Luzira prison. This is Uganda. Now, these cuts, let's go back to the cuts. They've been a very, very effective campaign. In fact, I was telling a friend of mine that when we go to Karamoja, or when my people go to Karamoja, they were almost beaten. They almost chased away. And they wondered, what's happening? The Karamoja, are they happy? They don't want a change? But no, the reason they were being chased away and beaten was that they asked them, where have you been all this time? This is what we've been waiting for. What made you take so long? So, so they were being heard because they took so long to take the step. This is how Uganda is now. We've penetrated the whole country. Everybody's happy. Most people are on board, and they're just waiting on what is going to happen next. Now, Mr. Museveni being a coward, and I call him a coward. You see, even in school and worldwide, anybody who's a bully is a coward. Because he's a coward, he's scared. If he's not scared, let him dare that I go and stand. But he's scared. And therefore, he's arrested all my supporters, or he's trying to, and he has now brought up fallacious charges against me to block me from going to Uganda. So that gives him an excuse. As soon as I landed in Entebbe, he arrested me because I'm being charged by court on terrorism charges and murder charges. Now, this is absolute nonsense, and we are going to resist this type of intimidation. I want to tell all of you who are listening here, you cannot do anything against Museveni if you are intimidated. And I, for one, I am not scared of Museveni. I'm not intimidated by Museveni. If anything, the more he does this, the stronger I become. And I want to urge all of you who love Uganda, or profess to love Uganda, and those friends of Uganda, that this is the time. We don't have much time. In the medical languages, since I was introduced as a doctor, you could equate this to a very malignant cancer. Now, if you don't cut off the leg, the rest of the body dies. Now, we've reached that critical stage. This malignant cancer must be ripped out, and very, very quickly too. If you recall, and I'll speak for another 3-4 minutes and then I'll open up. I was given 10 minutes. I said supposed elections. The reason is that the elections in Uganda have become a joke. This man has flouted, all norms of democratic principles. He's cheated left, right, and center. He's beaten up people at polling posts. He's imprisoned and charged opponents. I'm not the first one. Kizza Besigye was slapped with rape charges some years ago when he was standing against Museveni. The Electoral Commission is like really backroom group door rule for Museveni. And he does what he wants. They announce what he wants. He has already rigged the elections for next year. On another occasion, I'll let you know why I'm telling you this. We have evidence already that he has already rigged the 2016 elections. And then many people are going to say, well, why are you doing that anyway? The reason is if we give in now, then there will never be a change in Uganda. We cannot afford this. And history is going to judge us very, very harshly if we do. So, if elections are a sham, and if he can stop elections anytime, or beat up opponents, or arrest them, or now he's trying to say he wants to arrest me, he's very welcome. But let me tell you, he would have to arrest the 1.5 million or now 5 million Ugandans. They are so determined and so prepared. He arrests me, the 5 million are going to stand up. Finally, before I leave the platform for you to ask questions, this is very important. Do we have any other avenue if he's going to cheat in elections? The answer is yes, we do have avenue. Under the Constitution of Uganda, which Mr. Museveni made, mind you, it empowers the people of Uganda to effect a change in the government if the president abrogates or compromises or breaks the Constitution. And there are avenues for this. The first avenue is to have the parliament impeach the president. But as you know, this is a rubber stamp parliament. It's not going to impeach the president.
Yeah.
However, there is a second avenue after that. The people themselves can then change the government. Therefore, we have a mandate now. If this man blocks me from going to Uganda, if this man continues to harass my supporters, if this man refuses to change the Electoral Commission, if this man refuses to put a fair playground for a true and honest election, then the people of Uganda are empowered by the Constitution to effect a change. And I could quote you at least 20 articles that Museveni has broken under the Constitution. If you allow me, I'll list a few. Mr. Museveni has completely ignored the Constitution when he failed to execute and maintain the Constitution and all laws made under or contained, enforced by the Constitution, thereby breaking Article 99, Part 2. He failed to uphold, abide, and safeguard the Constitution and the laws of Uganda, and to promote the welfare of the citizens and protect the territorial integrity of Uganda, thereby breaking Article 99, Part 3. He grossly failed to protect the personal liberty of the citizens, for example, by denying them the right to work and detaining them in the so-called safe houses. Article 23, Part 2. He denied the citizens protection of right to life by ruthlessly shooting innocent unarmed citizens. I'll come to this. And students, about 12 students have been killed in the last 5 days, including children and pregnant women, instigating terror groups of killers using iron bars, and organizing deliberate burning down of schools, markets, burial sites with fatal consequences. And here he broke Article 22 of the Constitution. He failed to protect the citizens from inhuman treatment and disrespected their human dignity when he ruthlessly used the police under his direct command to inhumanly beat and torture unarmed and peacefully demonstrating opposition and civil society organizations who are trying to express their opinions about the sorry state of the nation. Here he broke Article 24 of the Constitution. He denied the citizen the right to privacy of person, home, or other property by unjustified and unconstitutional tapping of telephones and opening of mail. He broke Article 27 of the Constitution. He denied the citizens the freedom of assembly and association, restriction of meetings, stopping peaceful walk to work, prohibition of address systems. He failed to protect the freedom of movement, illegal confinement of opposition groups, and so on, thereby breaking Article 29. He failed to protect the environment for the common good of Ugandans, and he used his position for material gain when he dished out, and still does, or tried to dish out forest reserves, national parks, and game reserves to the so-called investors. And here, of course, everybody knows about Sese Islands and Mabera Forest. He did this as if it was his personal property, whereas the government holds such places in a trust for the people. Here he broke Article 237 of the Uganda Constitution. He conducted himself in a manner which brought the office of the president into hatred, ridicule, contempt, and disrepute, when he publicly told the citizens that he did not mind or care the high prices, which meant that he didn't care at all, when he callously told the Owino market vendors to look for an alternative place and leave the city when their market was ruthlessly burnt down by government agents, mind you, and when he publicly declared war on the honest and forward-looking Ugandans who opposed the giving away of Mabira Forest in order to safeguard future generations. Here he broke Article 107, Part B, Part 1. He dishonestly carried out the following acts, which were prejudicial and inimical to the economy and security of Uganda. Taking over the oil fields as if it was his personal property, irate deals with bogus investors at the public expense, invasion and looting of the DRC, Congo, with consequent ruling against Uganda in the International Court for Uganda to compensate the DRC in billions of dollars. Here he broke Article 107, Part B, Part 2. He created a special class of untouchables with respect to law, security, payment of taxes, civil behavior, and corruption, thus discriminating against the majority of Ugandans. My dear friends, here he broke many articles. He repeatedly rigged elections at all state levels. He constantly bribed MPs, and he maintained a biased and non-independent electoral commission. Again here, he broke various articles. I'll quote just one more. He failed to govern Uganda based on the principles of national interest and common good, enshrined in the national objective and directive principles of state policy. And here he broke Article 8A of the Uganda Constitution. Therefore, we have a mandate. We have a legal basis. Even under the Constitution, Museveni made himself to effect a change in Uganda.
Wow, thank you so much for that. And with that, we will allow Lawrence to go ahead with the first question that he had on board to ask you. Go ahead, Lawrence.
Yes, Dr. Kiyingi, thank you for what you have listed. And here comes my first question. You have in several places stated that not everyone is equal under the law. You just mentioned this.
Yes.
That the legal regime in Uganda is used to privilege some while undercutting others.
Yes.
You yourself, you have been processed through the judicial system in Uganda.
Yes.
You were found not guilty. But then afterwards, your property was attached because a phantom person sued you.
Yes.
What is your take on the judicial process in Uganda, and what would you change if anything has to be changed?
Thank you very much. Even within his own house, actually there are some people who see that Mr. Museveni is not the right person to lead Uganda at this time anymore. That goes for every department in the country. The judiciary is not an exception. There are people who are committed in the judiciary, and God bless them, and under very, 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 very difficult conditions. Many have been threatened, as you know. Many have been intimidated. Many have been demoted somehow, somewhere, because they have refused to give up their principles. They have refused to bow down to orders from State House. So, I must make this here, that you cannot condemn the judiciary in Uganda as a basket. No, there are many people in the judiciary who are upright, who are trying to do their job, but their life is very tough, is very, very difficult. I'll not go back to my trial because that would be another issue. But there are many people, as you know, whom the court has cleared and they've been rearrested, or where the judicial officers have been threatened and the government has completely ignored what the courts have said. So not everybody in the court is corrupt, and not everybody in the system is corrupt. However, there is a group which is used constantly by State House, where they are directed to make a false charge, where they are directed to make a false ruling, where they are directed to take over property illegally. And these, unfortunately, they have a lot of power because they've got the backing of the state in terms of State House under Museveni. What would I change? I'll make the playground fair for all judicial officers. And I'll make sure that the judicial system is totally, and I mean totally independent. So there will be no orders from State House. There will be no fake documents supported by State House functionaries in order to take over property of Dr. Kiyingi. The judiciary will be the judiciary, and they will be independent. Now, that goes that the good ones are going to be praised, and they're going to take the country forward. However, if you are then under that system, you are a corrupt judicial officer, then, my friend, will come down on you very, very hard. Yeah. Because you would have been entrusted with the freedom of the people. The judiciary is supposed to check government. And that's what my government would do, that the judiciary will be totally independent, the corrupt ones are going to be rooted out, and the people will know that there is a fair and just system. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Doctor. That was beautiful and very well said and very well put. Let me just spin off of that a little with my question when you said making the playgrounds fair for all. When we look at the primary education system there in Uganda, the decline of the standards and all the money and donated funds that are going to these government schools to make them better, we have no results at the end of 28 years. Under your campaign and under a new government, how do you see us moving forward with correcting those problems and making the government schools just as compatible as the private school sectors there in Uganda?
Thank you very much. Actually, I just had a talk about that last week, and there is a small article on our website, www.ugandafdo.com, about the primary school system. I'll be speaking on secondary and university education in Uganda sometime either this week or next week. But the primary education in Uganda is now in shambles. In 1996, the government announced that there would be universal primary education, which on the face of it was a very, very, very good idea. However, old habits die hard because of the thieving hands and corruption in Uganda. Probably 90% of the money meant for universal primary education has been looted. It's straight bank robbery. That money, there is nothing to show on the ground. Uganda has had donations. It has had budgetary allocations. It has borrowed money for universal primary education. But this is now a shame. Children study under the tree if they study at all. There is now a widespread epidemic of jiggers in the primary schools in Busoga, and this is 2015. They don't have lunch. They don't eat. 3 weeks ago, a whole minister cried when she was confronted with the reality on the ground that children in the primary schools don't have lunch. I just wonder what she was doing all these 27 years in the government. Now, what would I do? I would improve the standard of the primary schools. I would set uniform standards which would be complied with by both government and private schools. Because in any country, private education plays a very big part, and I'm sure you know, in Australia and in the US, for example, many of the famous medical institutions were actually private, some of them. Now, the government will give an incentive to private institutions in order to help them and to help the country and to encourage them to do a good job. Because many times the private institutions have got more money than the government. However, they would have to subscribe to minimum standards, and they would have to be checked by government to know that they're doing the right thing. As for the government schools, the students would definitely have lunch, my friend. I mean, there is no way an 8-year-old girl or 9-year can go through school after walking 5 kilometers. You're in the US, so you don't know this. But in Uganda, students travel. They walk to school. There are no buses. They walk to school in the villages, 4 or 5 kilometers, and then they don't have lunch? Good God. So there will be money for food. There will be money for the essential school utensils, which are not there now. There will be money for the basic health objectives, which is not there now. or it's being stolen. There will be money to pay the teachers, and people forget this. We talk about the children, we talk about their fare, and we forget the teachers. There will be no schools. There will be no students without the teachers. At the moment, 40% of the teachers, probably more, are not paid on time. 1 month to 3 months. Now, these are people with families. These are people with wives and children. How do you expect him to do a good job when he has not been paid? And pitiful pay anyway. It's not big money, but he has not been paid for 2 to 3 months. So I'll make sure that the teachers are happy. And then I can push them around. If I pay you, I make your conditions good. Well, you have to deliver, my friend. Otherwise, you have to answer. So I'm going to overhaul the whole primary system to make sure that the educational standards are uplifted, the students are catered for, the teachers are catered for, and we shall look at the curriculum too. Mr. Museveni has discouraged the people to study in their natural languages. Now, those of you who know the history of Uganda, it's actually not a uniform country. And even now, scientifically, we know, and even UNESCO supports this, that children learn better in the early years if they are being taught in their natural language. So this is going to be rectified. It's not to say that English or Swahili is not going to be taught. No, but this is going to be in tandem with the local languages. And children learn better at that stage.
Yes, and one other thing before Lawrence comes in with his next question, I didn't hit on it, but the infrastructure. When you see these schools, you have way too many children in one classroom. The majority of them are sitting on the floor in the dust. It's just, the prime minister that went there and cried in her district, like you just said, about the conditions of her school there. What are you going to do to rehaul these schools? Because apparently the schools are just in ruin.
Well, if they're there, if the schools were in ruin, it means they were built in the first place. I would like to correct you, Brenda. They were not built. They are sheds. They're not even there. This money was there. This money was allocated and it was stolen. And these people who stole this money would have to answer to the people of Uganda. So it's not a question of whether the money was there or not. We're not going to build a 5-star hotel in Nakapiripiriti village. No, we are going to build a basic school, basic classrooms, and these Uganda can afford if there is no theft. So my government will do that.
Thank you. Thank you so much for coming back and answering that.
Okay, having told us that Uganda is not a uniform country, I want to stretch that a little bit further and ask you that there is this question of tribalism in Uganda and a mistrust among our people, which in many ways have been exacerbated under the last 30 years. What do you bring to the table to bring our people to understand and respect each other's norms, but remain proud of who they are while remaining nationalists? How do you deal with that?
I've already addressed it in part, because the platform under which I'd like everybody, and I want to emphasize everybody. I know there are many groups. I know there are many people striving to save Uganda. But if you're going to go under DP, you're going to fail. If you're going to go under UPC, you're going to fail. If you're going to go under FDC, you're going to fail. If you go under NRM, you're going to fail. We must have a platform which everybody, whether DP or UPC or FADDU, it does not matter. We have a common aim now. We must change the country. And that's why I'm saying that I've already addressed that in part by choosing a name for the platform as the Uganda Federal Democratic Organization. And I'll expand on that. Uganda is Uganda, you know that. Federal. This was very carefully thought about. And as many people know, that Uganda was really a conglomeration of states, small states, 52 states. Now, these mini states and some bigger states had their own way of living, had their own traditions, have their own culture, have their own languages. And the politicians, unfortunately, have used these to the detriment of the people and to the detriment of the country by dividing them and telling them that if you are an Acholi and you're proud Acholi, then you're not Ugandan. Oh, what a trash.
Yes.
If you are a proud Munyankole and you subscribe to the Chinyankole culture, then you're not a true Ugandan. If you're Musoga and you're proud to be a Musoga, then you're not Ugandan. No, this is a sham. This is a lie. Actually, the strength of Uganda and the richness and the beauty of Uganda lies in its diversity. If we respect somebody from Gulu, if we respect somebody from West Nile for what he is and what his culture is, that man is going to contribute to Uganda 150%. Because he will know that he's part of a bigger picture, but everybody respects him as an Acholi. Now, who are you? You tell me, who are you to say that the people from the East are not going to carry out Imbalu? For those of you listening, Imbalu is a ceremony in the eastern part of Uganda, where for a man to become a man, you must go through this ceremony. You can check up the details. Now, are you going to say you're going to tell these people you're not going to be men anymore? Who are you to say that? Is this detrimental to the nation? No, it is not. For example, I'll go further. Under my government, the regions, the people are going to be allowed, in fact, encouraged to be proud to be a Munyoro, encouraged to be proud to be a Karamajong. I quoted last week that, for example, if I put there a national cup for soccer in Uganda, if I'm president, when I become president, and this is going to be between regions, I bet $1, because that's all I can afford at the moment, to bet on radio. I'll bet $1 that my colleague and friend, Mr. Munini Mulera in Canada, who is a very, very proud Muchiga from Chigezi, is going to do everything possible to make sure Chigezi takes the cup. Now, I know Mr. Ochen from Acholi is going to do the same to make sure Acholi takes the cup. And somebody from Busoga is going to do everything possible to make sure Busoga takes the cup. Now, in your right thinking mind, is this bad for the country? Do you see what I'm doing?
Yeah.
I'm going to get the best of the best in Uganda. And that will go in schools, in sport, in culture, in singing, in this, in athletics. Oh, Uganda is going to develop at unprecedented speed, because this diversity is actually good for the country if there is a fair and honest system. So I'm not worried about tribalism. This word tribalism was made to derogate that good idea, that good concept. Tribalism, if properly addressed, is actually a very, very good thing for Uganda in terms of structure, in terms of development, and in terms of stability. We have a competition here. It's called the State of Origin, where football, the states here compete. Let me tell you, it's like a third world war here when New South Wales plays against Queensland. But they don't kill one another. At the end of the day, we have the best of the best. Next question.
Yes, and that sounds like unity to me. And there's been too much rule and divide, and that is a great way, I think, of bringing the people back together to not only make them proud, but to make them proud of the country in which they're playing and serving. So thank you for that. One of my biggest issues, because I've seen too many pictures, I've talked to too many individuals, is the state of the health care there in Uganda. As a candidate in 2016 election, how do you want to move this forward? Because you yourself being a MD, as far as the hospitals, as far as AIDS go there, and the people in the north, I read, I think it was one of your documentaries that you sent me, 1,500 people dying daily in the north in those camps. One of the things I also like you to address, because you talked about health care in the schools, I think health care in the schools are going to be very, very important, because if those children are able to see doctors and nurses like they are in America, Australia, Canada, throughout the free world, you cut down on a lot of the issues that we're seeing in the young children. You keep them healthy at that level, they're healthy going forward. But then we've got to address those who are not in that system the elderly, the pregnant, those with AIDS and other diseases that are rampant there in Uganda. I mean, you're talking about hospitals that have no oxygen. Blood transfusions are just are not there. The monies that are going in are given for AIDS is not being used. And we know that Uganda is the darling for donations from charitable organizations around the world. And that's one of the things I've been opening people's eyes to is the fact that your money is not going where it needs to go. How are you going to address that as a 2016 candidate running for presidency there in Uganda?
Thank you very much. I thought that if I mentioned medicine and medical facilities first, you'd say I am biased. So it's good you now you have prompted me to answer the question.
Yes.
Obviously, as you can imagine, health is at the core of my well-being and my existence. I've already tried. Some years ago, I tried to go into Uganda Heart Institute, almost fatal consequences, because they didn't want me to effect a change there. I tried to build a private hospital in Uganda, again, almost fatal consequences. But now, as a nation, there is a lot that we can do. And let me tell you, actually, we don't have to spend big dollars like Australia, like Canada. The Ugandan people, that's why, for example, I need to go back to the core, to the village, to the culture, to the regional. Because when you do that, then problems in Uganda can be solved very, very easily and cheaply. You motivate the people. You motivate the people to eat well. And there will be incentives for this. You motivate the people to be clean, and there will be incentives for this. You motivate the people to use clean water, and there will be incentives for this. It's not very difficult to have a health unit in every district, in every sub-county. With the money that Mr. Museveni and his cronies have looted, I could literally build overnight, at least 12 state-of-the-art hospitals around the country.
Wow.
And that's a minimum. Oh. That's absolute minimum. Therefore, the money has been there. It has been misused. So building the hospitals and refurbishing health centers and building new ones is not an impossible task. I'm not dreaming here. It can be done. Manpower is another issue, though. Because I could put a building there in 6 months. Do I have qualified doctors for that? Probably not enough. And that's going to take a bit of time. And here, Brenda, I'm going to use my good name to get doctors. I had already started on a program many years ago and had already got specialists from Australia who had been willing to go to Uganda because of me, because of my name, and do some heart operations and heart procedures without being paid. So I can get people to volunteer, to work. If I came to the US and spent 2 weeks talking to doctors, I'm sure I'd be able to get 100 doctors. Minimum.
Yes, I'm sure.
Absolute minimum. If I went to Europe, I'd get another 300. Absolutely. So getting the health system in order is one of my priorities, as you can imagine, and it can be done. It's not impossible. It can be done. But in Uganda, the difference is going to be that we've got to concentrate on what looks trivial in the developed countries. Because you don't think about clean water in Australia. You don't think about clean water in the US. You assume it is clean water. So in Uganda, we've got to go back to the very basics first. But that's not a bad thing, because that's going to be preventive. We're going to prevent a lot of things. As you know, at the moment, there is an epidemic of typhoid in Kampala, and at least 15,000 people have been affected. And at least 600 people have actually died. As we speak now, this will not come out in the press, but as I told you, I've got foot soldiers in every part of the country. So I get this news instantly. Now, they're dying in Uganda today of typhoid in Kampala. Isn't this a shame? And this man, Museveni, dares to stand up and say he's the president of Uganda, dares to stand up and say Dr. Kiyingi is a terrorist, dares to say that he is going to stand again in 2016. As a sole candidate, yeah. This man is a criminal. This man is a killer. This man is a terrorist. How can you have 600 people die of typhoid in Kampala in 2015? This is a criminal. And I want the whole world to stand up. I want the whole world to see. I want the friends of Uganda. This is the time to change this system. Otherwise, history is going to judge you and judge us very, very harshly. Next question.
Okay. Well, there are moments when we feel dumbfounded because of what's happening in Uganda. But going on with what you said, the regional government actually suspended the aid to Uganda because Uganda's government did something that is basically criminal by exporting medical doctors to Trinidad and Tobago while the Ugandans are dying at home. Now, that leads me to my next question. The best brains in Uganda have, in the last 45 years, been leaving the country. People like you, cardiologists, highly, highly needed in Uganda. What incentives do you have to attract your kind back to Uganda, considering that the economy is not strong enough to financially sustain these individuals at the rates they are earning in the diaspora?
No, I think you are wrong. Uganda is rich enough to sustain and to maintain its own people. It's only that the resources are misused. Uganda is not poor. And the amount of money that has been poured in the country under the Museveni regime, untold billions given or loaned or borrowed, this is enough to pay every doctor. It's enough to pay every teacher. It's enough, more than enough. Now, with all due respect, with all the profession that have left Uganda, many have left because they are looking for green pastures, yes, but many have left because they've been forced to leave, because their lives were in danger. And there is another group which have left because they cannot do their job. And you try to do your job properly, you become an enemy of the government. Now, my government is going to rectify that. I'm going to show the professionals, whether you're an engineer or a teacher or a doctor, there is level playground in the promotions, in business, and there is an opportunity to make money in Uganda. Now, many people are going to go back, I'm telling you, because if, for example, you've got a medical facility in London, and you're a doctor, you are living in the center of London, maybe on an apartment, high-end apartment. In Uganda, literally you do have a palace, because here you're going to have your 50 acres and your mansion. So in terms of living condition, they can be very, very good if the country is run properly. In terms of salaries, although Uganda may not match what a doctor earns in Australia, it's going to match with other facilities. For example, a doctor can be able to buy easily 100 acres of land in Uganda. Now, 100 acres in USA, if you own that, and you're not a farmer, you're in the city or suburb, you're a billionaire. So the conditions are not bad in terms of living conditions if there was level playground and the government was fair and was good leadership. So those people from outside, I will not have a problem attracting them. In fact, the problem is going to be that when they come, will they come when I've already built the hospitals? I'm going to have a problem having specialists coming to Uganda and the specialist facilities are not yet ready. So I don't have a problem with that. I can convince you, if I came to the US and there is a change in the government, I'll convince the people in Uganda, I'll convince you to be on the next plane to Uganda. Not only that, you don't have even to leave where you are and go back to Uganda under my administration. There is nothing to stop you having a clinic in Massachusetts and another clinic in Kampala. You see, this man Museveni is scared of this. He's scared of dual citizenship because he knows he's a thief, he's a robber, and for him, he has nowhere to run. But I don't see a problem. You can have your clinic in Boston, and have a clinic in Dar es Salaam, and a clinic in Kampala. All of us gain, and you're happy. So I will not have a problem, and I would definitely be able to attract these people back. Not only that, those who are leaving the country, we're not going to legislate to say you can't leave the country. No, they can leave the country if they want to. But if they have got to go to London and spend the first 6 months in the winter in a small apartment, struggling with electricity and the transport, and in Uganda he would have had a house in a district hospital with a car, I don't think he's going to be very keen to run out of the country if the conditions are good. So no, I'm not worried. And the health sector, I can assure you, is on top of my list, and it would definitely change. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you so much for that. I love the dual citizenship thing because I tell you, I think the diaspora community, even in the 2016 election, should have the rights to vote for who they want to see come into the country. You sort of answered some of the questions that I was going to ask here in my next question, and it is this. I want to give you a platform right now to talk to the diaspora community about reasons why they should come back home and the benefits that will come from that. You've addressed a lot of it because of the issues. There's so many people in the diaspora community that understand democracy. They understand the way it works. They've lived in communities where I think they will be able to contribute to what needs to happen in a new Uganda. So let's talk to the diaspora community just for a second as to why they are so needed. The jobs will be there. The pay, like you said, will be there in order to move Uganda forward. Just comment on that just a little bit more for me, if you would. Thank you.
Well, yes, my friends in the diaspora. As I say, I mean, what stops you having a holiday house in the shores of Lake Victoria and a business in Kampala and a clinic in Gulu and a penthouse in Paris? I don't see any problem with that. So you have the best of both worlds. You'll be helping your own people because everybody, all of us, still have relatives, even if you're very well off. And if you make conditions better for them, you make your conditions better. So in terms of those who are privately employing themselves, in terms of revenue and facility, I'm sure you make a lot of money. I'm sure you'll be much well off. And you'll be free to travel. You don't have to restrict that you cannot be a citizen of the U.S. at the same time be a citizen of Uganda. Why not? I think that's building Uganda on a global scale. And you'll be bringing in friends and investors and professionals because you'll be free to come and go as a Ugandan. And we don't care, or I wouldn't care, if you are also a citizen of Nicaragua. Because we might get something from Nicaragua which is beneficial to the country. So there is something to gain for you. And here, I'm not talking about the country, I'm talking about you as a person going back to Uganda. Number two, for those in the diaspora, many of you, even when you are well off, one of these days you're going to reach retirement age. If you had a medium-sized house and the mountains, the foothills of mountain of Elgon in Mbale, would you prefer to retire there on 50 acres of land or to retire in a small apartment or nursing home in London? I think the answer is very obvious. I mean, if you could afford both, and if the medical facilities were there to treat you if you're sick. So, even in retirement, you might benefit by having two homes. And this is not something that is going to be detrimental to the nation. It's going to be something that is going to help the nation. Museveni is scared because for him, he's locked in because of his crimes. He cannot go and have a home in the USA, you know, because he's a criminal. And so he's scared, and he wants to block everybody from having the same facility. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We'll go back to Lawrence now.
Yes, thank you.
This is one question that I would like us to explore. And if you can point us in the direction, because Uganda has been wounded.
Yes.
And we have these major protruding scars of war. The genocide in Acholi sub-region, the tragedy of the Ruwero so-called triangle, the plunder of eastern Uganda, the unsolved murders across the country, etc. How do you envision your government is going to deal with this kind of rehabilitation?
Can you just repeat the question?
Okay. The question is that
rehabilitation for the people who have suffered.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. And before I go further, you may have had a little bit of noise in the background. I'm actually doing this interview at home. Today, being a Sunday, I didn't go to the office. I stayed at home in my study. And my 2.5-year-old daughter came to me here, and she wanted to speak to you on the microphone. So I had to tell her to go back to mom. So if you had that, don't get too worried. Now, the rehabilitation of these people is going to be a very, very big issue. Now, for some of you who know what's happened in the north and in the Ruwero, it's just beyond words. In the first instance, I think the rehabilitation has got to start in the mind. I've got to reassure these people, they are now human beings. They are now Ugandans. They are now Baganda in Ruwero. They are now Acholi in their home district. And once they know and they are comfortable that they are now human beings recognized with their own needs and their own principles, we'll go to the next stage. The next stage is to rehabilitate the facilities, because talking is good, but we have to show some action. And I believe that the country not only can afford, but owes it to itself to make some remedies to some of these people whose homes and lives were devastated and killed. Again, depending on the budget, I don't see that it is very difficult to build houses for those who are not able to build houses, or to give low interest or even no interest loans to people to build small houses, for example, in the northern part of Uganda, and definitely put facilities like schools and health back to the people. And after we've done that, the third stage is to involve them in national development. So 1, psychologically, mentally, they've got to feel secure. 2, basic existence, things like water and health. And then 3, actual participation in developmental programs. And on this call, I intend to decentralize many things in terms of government facilities. You don't have to have all the 15 ministries or 20 in Kampala. Some of these are going to be allocated in different parts of the country. You don't have to have Makerere University only as the major university. We must develop other universities in other parts of the country and bring them to standard. We must support the hospitals, so that the regional hospitals, they don't have to rush to Mulago Hospital to have a complicated hernia to be operated on. They must have good facilities, good labs, good specialists. And this is the only way that we can rehabilitate and get these people back to know and love their country.
Mm-hmm. Yes. I thank you so much for that. It's like you've opened up a chapter in my brain and you're speaking right from it. It's just amazing. And we thank you so much for all the things that you're sharing. I'm going to go in with the last question here for you. And then I think Lawrence is going to take us into a break, but he'll make an announcement before that because we're going to start to open up the lines. But let me go into this with you, Doctor, because it kind of feeds off of what you were just saying. I had some people here from an economic standpoint look at the unemployment rate there in Uganda being, as high as it is at 80% unemployment rate, which affects most of the youth.
90%.
90%. That bothers me even more. Affecting most of the youth. And the youth, I love the charisma of the youth because in spite of all of these things, education is still very, very important to them, and they're still going after their education. Many that I've talked to that have been able to come out of Uganda and study abroad have said, because someday there will be a regime change and they want to be prepared. And I like that about that spirit. I talked to some different groups here that said 3 to 5 years in Uganda and that unemployment rate can drop by 50% or more because there are so many ghost positions, number one. I want you to speak on those. There are so many positions that are not given. There are so many jobs that you, just in the interview you've had with us, you have created hundreds and hundreds of jobs just in some of the things you want to allocate and do out there throughout the different regions and stuff. Because I think one of the things the diaspora community needs to understand from what you're saying is it is going to take a lot of us back into Uganda to hug, embrace, and support the Ugandan people back into a state of wholeness. I have seen Microsoft companies that wanted to go into Uganda to do a deal with them to build these small little chips to go inside of the laptops. They would pay the Ugandans a decent rate, according to, like you said, for the area in which they live. It would be a very decent salary. That program went to South Africa. And they employed 300 youth there in South Africa, and it's still thriving there in South Africa today. What are you going to do with the help of many of us in the diaspora community to bring those deals back to the table, erasing corruption so that we get the youth and we get the Ugandan people back to work? Because we can employ a lot of people in Uganda. The jobs are there, and they can very easily be created, not because we need to create jobs, but because there will be a need for the jobs. Comment on that for me, if you will, Doctor.
Thank you. Now, creation of jobs and getting the people to believe in themselves is paramount in order for the country to run. Now, in order to do that, the government must show by example and then by incentives. Example, I was telling somebody again, I'll tell you again. Under my government, if my wife of this beautiful 2.5-year-old who wanted to say hello on this interview, if they come back from holiday from Australia and they're coming back to Uganda and they've bought some things, say a camera, and the stipulation of the country is that if you bring in something above $1,000, you got to declare it and pay tax.
Yes.
Let me tell you, my wife will pay tax. My wife will fill out that form and pay tax, and the normal tax. Brenda, I want to ask you, who then would dare try to go through Entebbe Airport without paying taxes? Mm-hmm. This has got to come from the top. But even my wife, if she brought in something which has to declare, she will have to declare it and pay tax, and the right tax. It's not like now when the wife of the president, and this is true, it happened some years back, went through Entebbe Airport with $3 million.
Wow.
And she was actually apprehended at London airport, but somehow, somewhere, things, were hushed up. This is true.
Mm-hmm.
$3 million in cash. Whose money was that?
Wow.
And if it was true money, why didn't she declare it? As the stipulation of the law is laid down. So these people will not have a problem. Once we rehabilitate their minds, once we put the incentives there, once we put electricity supply back, the jobs are just going to be there, I'm telling you. Now, even those without the jobs, and this is the important thing, that the jobs does not mean government jobs. We have not talked about agriculture, but I'm going to give incentives to people to produce small scale, and that's what actually runs Uganda. What has run Uganda for the last 1,000 years. And Uganda can feed almost the whole of Africa with good management. And therefore, the small scale farmers, the government will guarantee buying all your produce. And this is a guarantee. You produce 20 bags of maize in excess of what you need to eat, I'll buy them. You produce 100 bags of beans in excess of what you need to eat, I'll buy them. And in fact, we put incentive. We produce 150 next year, we can give you a discount on taxes. You see what I'm doing? I'm encouraging all these people to go back and use the land. And that is going to be in every sphere. And you're going to ask me, what are you going to do with the beans? What are you going to do with the maize? I have markets already. If now I signed a contract to sell beans and soybeans, my problem is going to be I'll not be able to supply. So the markets are there. I have connection. I'll have the markets. And all these goods, all this produce, I'll buy. I'm going to construct big warehouses where these are kept properly so that international standards are kept. And once we have enough, we are going to export them. The markets are there. I've already got the markets. Now, this Ugandan, not only has he got his job with the government, but he has got his small farm to do on the weekend. Very soon he's going to resign from the government and say, hey, I'm getting more money from farming. Therefore, let me go and do farming full-time. Do you know what that has done?
Yes,
he's going to employ more people on his farm, and he's going to leave a spot in a government job for me to employ somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll let Lawrence make an announcement here, and we're going to go and take a quick break. Lawrence, go ahead.
Thank you, Dr. Kiyingi. Thank you, my co-host. Thanks for the gentleman in the studio. Now, our wonderful listeners, friends of Uganda, this is how it's going to work. When we come back on air after a short break, we are going to take your calls. We are going to take about 3 questions, and the doctor will answer those questions at the same time. When you have already asked your question, please hang up so that the lines can open for others to call in and ask their questions. We are taking a quick break here. It will not be long. Stay tuned. Doctor, make your pen ready for the questions that are going to come your way.
No problem. Thank you.
Listeners, we are back on air with Dr. Kiyingi taking us through what he proposes for Uganda's future. Again, I said for people who want to call in, this is the time when you call in. And please introduce yourself and where you are calling from. As the calls begin to come in, Dr. Kiyingi, I have a couple quick questions here. And Peace Alinaitwe Chomgisha asks, how am I going to be sure that I am not harassed for being a Munyankole and Museveni's regime because of the crimes it has committed? Can you reassure me about my safety?
Thank you, Peace. I want to reassure you that under my government, you're not going to be victimized. And I want to actually assure you that many of my supporters are Banyankole. I'm sure this would be shocking to Dictator Museveni, but I have many Banyankole who are working with me, and we are together, and they are very willing to spearhead a change, to bring some decency into the country. So as a Munyankole, stand firm, you'll be safe.
All right, and Doctor, we have calls. We've actually just dropped one. So let's go ahead and let this one ask his question, and maybe the other one will come in, and you can answer them all at once. Caller, introduce yourself and come on in with your question.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Brenda. This is Movirum Soke. I have one question on the point of information. Let me begin with the point of information. Maybe the doctor may be interested in it. Uganda has a dual citizenship right now. Unfortunately, and this is where I think you should be interested in this point of information, the offices of state which a person holding dual citizenship is not qualified to hold include the president, vice president, and all the cabinet ministers, and it goes to intelligence officers and so on. So there are several of these offices. So you will have to deal with this issue because it's a legal issue. One way to frustrate your attempts to run for president would be, are you a dual citizen? If you are, then the law prohibits you from running as president. That's the point of information. The question is, I want you to tell me what the differences between Uganda, Kenya, and Tanzania is. What has caused this difference? Why have Kenya and Tanzania progressed in democratization and Uganda has not? What went wrong with Uganda? I'm asking the question because you're a doctor. As a doctor, of course, the first thing you do is to diagnose the disease. And once you know the cause of the disease, then you can prescribe the right medicine to cure the disease. That's why I'm asking that question. And lastly, of course, you talk about a platform. Well, a platform, you can put many political parties on it. That's right. But you know what? This platform sounds very much like NRM in 1986. When they came in, they said, all political parties are going to be included in the government and they are going to be part of the movement system. So I want you to distinguish your platform from the movement system, because that may be very important. Thank you very much.
Now, already these are 3 questions.
I know. We'll let you go ahead and start answering because our other calls dropped.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yes. Dual citizenship, I'm not worried about that. I think it's Mr. Museveni who is very worried, because if he was so sure that he can block me on the dual citizenship issue, he would not even try to stop me coming back to Uganda. To be a straight issue for the Electoral Commission to stop me. So this will be dealt with. Let's wait. We'll cross that bridge when we reach it, but I can assure all Ugandans and all friends of Uganda, this will not be a problem. This is Museveni's problem. 2, why is Uganda different from Kenya and Tanzania? I cannot answer for Kenya or Uganda or Tanzania, but the basic social setups in Uganda and Kenya, you would know, Mr. Mobiru Musoke, are different, way back from the colonial times. If you ignore that, the social cultural structures of Uganda and Kenya and Tanzania were different. If you ignore that, then, you think it has to be uniform. No, the social structures, the cultural structures have been different right from the word go, even under colonial times. After saying that, unfortunately, Uganda has been unlucky in getting greedy, corrupt, and thieving politicians. This has set Uganda backwards. And this is now, it's not a question of culture, it's a question of greed and theft and corruption, which Mr. Museveni has excelled in. He's an expert, and therefore he's plundered and sabotaged every effort to salvage our country. The last thing about the platform, with all due respect, Mr. Musoke, I'd like to make this very clear. Please do not compare me to Mr. Museveni. Mr. Museveni is a thief. Mr. Museveni is a liar. Mr. Museveni is a dictator. He has broken every agreement, almost every agreement. So don't compare me to Mr. Museveni. When I tell you something, it's going to be done. Now, this platform, unlike the NRM, is not going to be a camouflage platform, which the NRM was. He lied to the people. This platform is going to get all Ugandans together in order to restructure and reshape our country. After that, and I can promise you, this will not then, in 7 years' time or whatever time, or 5 years, it's going to turn itself into a party. Because then you have an unfair advantage over all other parties. There will be a time for that where parties are then called upon, and the people will be free to form a new party and take the principles that have been imparted on them. But as a Uganda Federal Democratic Organization, this will not be switched over into a party, because you'll be taking an advantage over all others, which Museveni did with his NRM. This is the difference. Next question.
Yes, we're waiting on calls. Do we have another caller in?
No, I have questions by text here.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead, Lawrence.
Mukasa Jagenda, I'm reading from my phone text, is saying that land has been taken away from us. What are you going to do to make sure that land is returned to the bona fide owners? Lake Victoria is being sold. What intervention do you have? And the wetland, like the one in my home area of Nabajuzi, are being destroyed. What is your environmental policy?
Again, these are three questions. Thank you very much, Mr. Mukasa. The issue of land is very dear to me. I'm one of the victims. My land has been taken, my property has been taken. So I share with you. Not only that, schools have been evicted from their schools. The Nabagereka school I mentioned, Shimoni, and there are many others. Now, government has abrogated its responsibility. Government under Museveni has failed. The government is supposed to be a custodian for the people. And if there is a particular part of land, if, for example, there is a part of land in Mbale, and this could be good for the national interest because there is uranium there, the government has no power to evict the owners without negotiating and compensating them properly. Now, if the government is true and honest, I do not think we would have a problem discussing with the owners that this particular part of land, we can build a university, it is very central, it's good, and you give all sorts of reasons. And if the people agree, and you reach an agreement, then they should be compensated fully. And there will be peace and the development, the people will be happy, the government will be happy, the country will be happy. What Museveni does, he sleeps in his state house, he gets his sham investors and says, I want to take Bugiri because this is good land for investors. He gives this to these people and you never see what comes out of that investment. This is plain theft and this is criminal. And Museveni and his henchmen have got to answer. So the people who have lost their land, don't lose hope. We shall rectify this, and either your land will be returned to you or you'll be compensated fully with mutual agreement. Lake Victoria, Lake Kyoga, these have been spoiled. they're being sold. There is this green thing, the green leaf that floats on the lake. And this man has borrowed so much money in terms of trying to get rid of this. And every time billions of shillings and millions of dollars, they just pocket the money. No, Lake Victoria, we're back to be a national asset under my government. That is an assurance. The wetlands, we shall do everything possible to salvage what is left, because a lot has been destroyed. And for those that we can reclaim, we shall talk to the people who have either maliciously or falsely gone into those places to vacate them and to be compensated. But for the government officials who have done this out of theft and greed, no, they will not be compensated. If anything, they will be punished for this. Next question.
The next one is from Onama.
We have someone on the call.
Sure, call up.
Okay, we'll go ahead and take the call. Introduce yourself, caller, and come on in and ask your question.
Hi, thank you for having me. I would like to say good afternoon to Ms. Brenda, good afternoon to Mr. Sereko, and good evening, I think. Good evening to Dr. Kiyingi. Dr. Kiyingi, we are very pleased to have you on Voice of Uganda Radio, and I have actually two questions for you. The first question is, I think you can hear me loud and clear, Doctor.
Yeah, we hear you just fine. Go ahead with your two questions.
Okay, my name is Akalimages and I'm calling from Manchester here. The first question I have is, Doctor, I've been following your speeches. I can hear you that you say my government or and the Constitution. I just want you to clarify the government that you have, because you have just come up within just a spate of time. Have you sat down? Do you have colleagues in Australia? Do you have colleagues in diaspora? Do you have people in Uganda? The government that you are talking about. I just want you to elaborate more about the government that you are talking about. And secondly, the second question is, what question are you talking about? What constitution are you talking about? Because we have seen that the constitution of Uganda, which was there before, was demolished. And then the NRM brought in the constitution that favored them. Are you also driving us into that constitution, sir? Thank you very much.
Okay, the first question is very simple. When I say my government, this would be under my government when we form government. So I've got to make that very clear. So when you get into government, under my government, those are the things that we're going to do. Very simple. The second one, the constitution. At the moment, I told you briefly, maybe you didn't listen at the beginning, there are ways and means of changing government. And if, this is a big one, if Mr. Museveni blocks proper elections, then there are other avenues under his own constitution. I'm quoting the current constitution of Uganda, my friend, 1995, and I have a copy with me here. So you should read that constitution. I'm not using a foreign constitution. I'm using current Uganda's constitution. That constitution gives the people of Uganda a mandate to change government under certain conditions. Next question.
Lawrence, we'll go ahead and go back to you.
Yeah, okay. I'll go back to the text. This is Mr. Onama from Mali. He wants to know, what are you doing about all these small groups trying to dislodge Museveni?
Again, at the beginning, I did mention, again, I'll repeat, I'd like all of you, if I've contacted already a number, but for some of you, I don't know your telephone numbers, please contact me. This is the time for us to get together. I know many of you have done a great job, but over the years, and Museveni is laughing because he knows there's a small group in Venezuela, there's a small group in Japan, and that sort of thing, and he knows nothing can be done. Now, I'm not going to take that, and that's why I've come forward. So I want all of you, please, let's get together. This is the time, it's now or never. So I'm not excluding anybody. I want all of you to come to the table, and the sooner you do it, the better, because time is running out. Thank you very much, Mr. Onama.
Thank you. And did we have a caller? I think we dropped the call again.
Yeah, I think we lost the call again. And I understand it's the same caller. Please,
okay.
Caller, if you can call back right now, we will stop anything else and we will patch you in. I have so many texts here. Okay.
While you're pulling up there's the call. It's coming back in. Hey, caller, introduce yourself and come on in.
Hello, my name is Brian Musoki, and thank you, Doctor, for your time, and everybody else, Brett, and everyone else for this time that you've offered for us. My question is one, Dr. Kiyingi, it seems to me that Uganda as a country, we don't have a national army. When you read the papers and everything that's going on, it looks like the army is wholeheartedly committed to one person. He does this and that. What is your plan going forward to address that issue? So many other countries have what they call a national army. But Uganda, to me, I don't know, it feels something like we have one. Can you address that question for me, please? Thank you.
Thank you. You're right. At the moment, actually, every time Museveni talks about the army, he says, my army. So even him, he acknowledges that his army is not a national army at all. Then we go back to the original question that Lawrence asked and why this platform was named under such names. It was very carefully thought of. If I recognize that the people from West Nile have got a right to exist as the people from West Nile and be recognized and given their due respect, and somebody from Kigezi needs to be respected as somebody from Kigezi, and we put that foundation for people to be proud of the part of Uganda they're coming from, the rest is going to be history. I talked about sports. I didn't talk about education. I didn't talk about health. I didn't talk about the army. But the army then is a natural development from this, because we're going to have people from West Nile. We're going to have an allocation of people from Karamoja. We're going to have people from Busoga. We're going to have people from Uganda. Now tell me what will be more national than that. So yes, I'm thinking of a national army, and it will be done. Next question.
And as far as policing, I just wanted to ask the question since you were on the Army. As far as policing there, because a lot of people say the Army and the police force has become one, do you feel the need for policing to be in its different regions? Because they understand the people, they understand the culture, there won't be any discrimination if that is known. We got another call, and then you can answer that. Oh, it dropped. But go ahead and just answer that for me.
Definitely, because if you got a policeman who is a Musoga in Busoga, it's going to be a little bit difficult for him to start raping the girls. Mm-hmm. He's got uncles and relatives and aunties, and to be a shame on his family.
The need to protect will be there. Yeah.
Exactly. To protect will be there. And two, we don't need a big police force in Uganda. Once the social system, social structures have been reassured that can exist peacefully. No, we don't need to have a big police force. And we don't have to militarize the police like Mr. Kaihura Museveni are doing. Next question.
Did you have any more, Lawrence, that are coming through?
Yeah, this one is from, this sounds like a Polish name, Mr. Kiyingi in South Holland, Illinois. Wants to know, okay, we have a call. Let's take the call. I come back to the text.
Caller, come on, introduce yourself and come on in and ask your question.
Yes, good evening, good afternoon, good morning, Dr. Kiyingi. My question to you is that we've seen Sages going back, and we have seen another one, I think Anthony Chakabale going back. What do you think, or what would be your policy if you set aside for the army and something like that happens? What do you think will happen to your army? Do you think this has the ability to divide your army? If so, do you think what has happened between Sejusa and Chakabale going back has divided the army, UPDF? And also, what do you think about UPDF trying to tackle the typhoid epidemic that's killing people in Uganda? Because it seems that everything is involved with the army. Is your new government going to be the same? Thank you so much.
And Doctor, we have one more call, and then we'll let you answer both of them. Caller, come on in, introduce yourself with your question for the doctor.
Yeah, hello, my name is David. I'm just calling about asking Dr. Kiyingi one more question. I don't think it'll be one or two. But one question is, like, if people who are helping you to put ahead your agenda and everybody is the one of the people that are in the government that have stolen land from people, have done every bad thing to the people, how you guarantee that people are going to get justice from the same people who are the same people going to be able to find your government to come to power? And one other thing is, just tell us any other projects. Like, we appreciate you, a doctor, you've done everything, but any other community that can justify that in Australia or anywhere else where you can tell us in Australia that Kiyingi is a good man, or anywhere else where you can, apart from coming out, you're going to come out as a president and everything, where is any other project you can tell us abroad or anywhere that you're going to be a good leader, that you've seen me do this and become successful? What other thing can you give us and give us that comfort that you're the best? And one last question is, if you fail for being a leader and everything, what are you going to do for the little people you're going to live down there that have nothing to eat? Is there any strategy of helping anyone else? Thanks very much.
Thank you so much.
Okay, look, there are many questions here. Maybe I better start with the second caller because he's had so many things there.
Yes.
One, I think he was talking about the people who have been helping Uganda now. And I'm assuming you're talking about governments and countries. What am I going to do with them? Because they've been funding and helping Uganda. Now, the simple answer to that is that this will be their prerogative. They can continue dealing with a sinking ship. They can continue to deal with a corrupt and dishonest man. They can continue to deal with somebody who kills his own people, who is actually practices internal terrorism. And if not today, if not tomorrow, but I can assure you it's going to be very soon, Museveni's government is going to fall. Now, these people, or these countries, do they want to be associated with Museveni after that? I've just put up some videos, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. After seeing those videos, do these people, these states want to be associated with this man? He's been very good at covering up, and many of us and many of you and many countries were fooled. But once we bring out the light, I don't think I'm going to have a problem with these people countries. In fact, they're going to thank me for bringing this into the open. And I will not have a problem dealing with them. I'm sure they will realize that Museveni's excess baggage and bad excess baggage, and I think they would like to run away from him as quickly as possible if they had a viable alternative. So that's the answer to your first question. The second question about leadership, do I have an example where I can quote you many examples where I am now, but that wouldn't help the Ugandans. But I'll just quote you what I've done in Uganda. In the late 1990s, I introduced computers and internet really into the country and in the schools single-handedly. 20 years later, the government is trying to do the same, and it is failing miserably. Under my company, the Hays International, we introduced computers and internet to schools, to radios, to singing groups, and I introduced a system of small payments, part-time payments, And this worked very well. And let me tell, for those of you who don't know, this is where actually my problems with Museveni started. Because he was very, very scared. He thought at that time I was political. He thought that at that time I was doing all this to take over the government. And actually at that time I was not even political at all. So I have an example that I've done in Uganda. I've built wells in the villages. I don't know what you have done. You have asked that question. I don't know what you've done for your village. But I've built wells in Uganda, and they are there to be seen. I have assisted women groups in Uganda. I've built some houses for women groups in Uganda, and they are there to be seen. I've educated children in Uganda, orphans and those who are very bright and could not afford university fees. There are very, very many there. I've got an example in Uganda. I've assisted the singing groups in Uganda. I've assisted the churches in Uganda. I've assisted the sick people to get out of Uganda, to get out of the country, to be operated on. I've brought some patients here in Australia from Uganda to be operated on at my own expense. I don't know what you've done for your country, but I think I've got a lot to show. The third question that you've asked is a food shortage. I'm not worried about the food shortage. The food shortage is artificial. The food shortage is because of bad government. I've already told you, if you get a small piece of land in Hoima, I'm going to encourage you to grow more beans. I'm going to encourage you to grow more maize. And I'll give you an incentive to buy whatever excess. And I'm going to help you get free seedlings. I'm going to have a fair system of taxes so that will bring down the prices, whether you like it or not. And when we do that, we encourage the people to grow more and to produce more. That is going to bring down the cost of transport. So there are a lot of things that we are going to do to encourage the people. And food shortage will be a thing of the past in Uganda. I've already mentioned, and I mean it, that Uganda under good governance can actually feed half of Africa. So that's for that gentleman. The first gentleman asked about UPDF. We've already said that this is really a functioning unit under Museveni. It's not a national army. About Chakabale and Sejusa, I cannot speak on their behalf. I don't know why Chakabale ran out. I don't know why he's going back. That is his prerogative, and I'll not say more. For Sejusa, he's been a bit more famous in the news. He went out and made a lot of noise, but many of you know that this was a sham and he was acting as a spy for Museveni. So I don't have very kind words for General Sejusa. Notwithstanding what he has done in terms of now being a spy, is what he's done in the northern part of Uganda. And this is on record. I really don't feel I should be associated with the Sejusa in any way because he's got crimes in the north that he has got to answer for. The second part of that question was about the UPDF trying to help people with the typhoid. Mr. Museveni actually doing this in panic now because he knows Dr. Kiyingi is coming. So he's trying to get the UPDF to be more people-friendly. And therefore, they're coming out to help with the typhoid. But don't be fooled. He's also using this to make sure the whole country is under fear for the army, because he has said so officially that he's going to take the army into the villages to keep law and order. Now you tell me what you're going to do with a soldier and a gun next to you, next door. It is keeping law and order. Oh yes, this is intimidation. So don't be fooled by some of these actions by the army. Next question.
Well, I have one, because you made a good point. You said if your wife goes out of the country, she comes back, she pays taxes just like everybody else. There's no one gets around the law.
Yes.
When we say that, the Truth and Reconciliation Commissions that are going to have to come in to a Uganda that is loaded with people who have done horrific things to the Ugandan people, are you going to have a problem at all seeing that on the Truth and Reconciliation Commission that these people have to stand for the crimes in which they have committed?
That is going to be on an individual basis. You cannot put a blanket cover on that. And it will depend on, one, the composition of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, two, their findings, and we have to respect their findings, because they've got to verify, one, the accusations, and then the atrocities committed. And then you can take, if those atrocities were against the people, I mean, the government owes it to the people to show that justice is being done. Next question.
Okay, I'll go back to the question by M.S. Kaczynski in South Holland, Illinois. Wants to know how Americans can help. You have addressed Ugandans and Friends of Uganda. She wants to know how she can help. She's concerned that she gets paid every 2 weeks. But your website, which she has visited, is not equipped to get her to make the commitment so that she's able to make a contribution every 2 weeks without reminders.
Thank you very much. Actually, this morning I had 2 emails about that same thing. My webmaster has been notified. As you know, it is a weekend here, and Australians love their weekends. So I could not get in touch with the webmaster yesterday when I got the emails about the same thing. This is going to be rectified within the next 2 to 3 days, so that the contribution part has got a system of encouraging people to have a regular payment. Thank you very much. And on that score, I'd like to call to all of you. But now you say what the Americans can do. Now, the Americans as people, and I'm addressing the Americans as people, not as government. The Americans as people, I know you're very generous people. And I know you spend a lot. I know you eat a lot. I've been to the US. I've been to the US. Now, come on. All of you can spare $50 or $100. Just have a miss on that Big Mac for 2 days and send in that money. That can go a long way in changing a system.
Yes,
so
and
please,
we are working on that.
Get on that website. Get on that website. Miss out on this big breakfast. In fact, I remember one day I was in Los Angeles and I asked for lunch, and they bought lunch now for 5 people. So look, just miss out one lunch and give that money to help the cause in order to remove a bad man.
We have another call, so let's go ahead and take this one. Caller, come on in. Introduce yourself and come on in.
Thank you very much.
Caller, come on and introduce yourself and come on in.
I appreciate you taking my call. My name is Jumba Kalukani from Dallas, Texas. I have 2 questions to the doctor, and I think I'm not going to elaborate so much about it. I'll just go straight to the questions. My questions are, 1, what exceptional do you, doctor, have as compared to the previous candidates, the heroes we celebrate, the dead heroes, like Sir Edward Ntesa, Benis Wanuka, Dr. Kayira, Mkwanga, Anthony Sekweyama? You know Museveni is the killer. You know it. And where do you put yourself if you go back to Uganda? The second question is, same is the exception you have. We have had Benis Wanuka in 61. We have had Paulo Kawanga in 80. We have had Besigye. We have had Sevana Chijito. We've had so many other politicians competing and winning elections. They have never ruled. They have never announced leaders. The Electoral Commission is the same. The man is the same conducting the elections. He's in power, and he every day says loud and clear, he's not going to give power to any opposition. And he said, the popular, just the paper cannot make him out of power. Doctor, please, let us know, convince the people. I know whatever you have said is true and clear and right. But it has brought nothing news to the people because the people have had all that. We know the president has violated the constitution. We know the need for election. We know everything. We know that. But what is the exception that you have brought to the people and that you convince the people that through elections you can win and be a president of the country with the presence of Museveni today? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Now, I'll take you back. I say that if we get elections, because I know that Mr. Museveni is going to try to prevent me at all costs, because he knows that if I go back to Uganda and stand against him, I'll win. And if I win, I'm not going to take it hands down. So he's not going to say I didn't win when I won. I've already got foot soldiers now, maybe 5 million. By the time the election comes, I may have 12 million or 15 million. That's almost all the voting people, almost. Now, let him dare. Let him dare. And I know he's listening. Let him listen. Let him dare steal the election or mess up the votes. Then the whole country will invoke the Constitution, because the Constitution empowers them to remove the president. So I want to reassure you that these people failed because they did not invoke the Constitution. Now, apart from the other failures, I don't know. I don't like to speak about people's failures. I'd like to speak about people's successes. And I am not in this to fail. So rest assured that yes, he'll block the election. He might steal, as usual. But this time, it's going to be different. That much I can assure you. So, on the other issue, I might as well put there that somebody asked what the U.S. can do. This brings me to that point also ties in. That here I would call upon the international community to join us and to help us and to support us. Because now I'm sure they know, I'm sure they can see that this is excess baggage. This is a bad boy, and he's becoming a big embarrassment to them. So please come to us now. We can put the situation back to normal, and it will be a win-win situation for everybody. Next question.
Yeah, and before we go back to Lawrence to give you another question here, one of my trips out to Washington, D.C. was very interesting to hear one of the congressmen say at a visit to Uganda, he was surprised to see the same face of Uganda some 25, 26 years later. And you're right. I think people are looking for a new way of dealing with the Ugandan people for trade reasons, for economy, for and even for investments. So you're absolutely right. I think a lot of the free world is getting tired of the same picture. Lawrence, we'll go ahead and go back to you with the next question there. Are you there, Lawrence?
Hello?
Hi, go ahead with the next question you had there, and we're going to kind of go ahead and wrap down because I think we've taken all the calls that are going to come through, so maybe we should, after your next question, give the doctor maybe 5 or 10 minutes to close here, and then we'll close out the program for the day.
Yes, I have a lengthy text from Lubega from Bukakata.
Okay.
His first complaint is about electricity in Uganda, and how are you going to improve that, because there is a private company that bought the former public entity. Will your government buy back the electricity company in Uganda and make it public again? And then his second question is, the retirement age in Uganda is 55 years. What plans, if any, do you have for him once he leaves government employment? If you don't have a plan for him, have you thought about increasing the age to maybe 65? But if you increase the age, that will increase unemployment. If you don't... That's basically the question.
Okay, thank you very much. About electricity, this is an issue that affects every Ugandan. I've been affected. Properties are destroyed, schools burned down, factories burned down. And again, this is because of the incompetence and the theft and the callous nature of Mr. Museveni. He does not care. Uganda should have enough electricity for everybody. Part of this electricity is sold overseas, outside the country, in the neighboring countries. And that is there. He doesn't care whether people have power or not. Now, in terms of the Uganda Electricity Board, which Museveni broke down and set up the 3 companies, they have to explain what actually happened. Uganda Electricity Board had assets. It was not in debt. And now these companies are struggling. What is happening to the revenue? What happened to those assets? This was daylight robbery. So those 3 companies now, one, either they would have to explain and be nationalistic, or they will be taken down and a similar institution that the Uganda Electricity Board reinstituted for the good of the people and for the good of the country. The retirement age, now retirement is 55, but of course this was made many years ago. Things have changed. And I agree with you that there is a need to revisit this and see whether it can be increased to 65. That's a very legitimate question. If we increase the retirement age to 65, I don't agree with you that this is going to increase unemployment. I've already told you that there will be incentives for people to do private business. There is going to be incentive for people to go back farming. They are not going to be hit with the punitive taxes, which Mr. Salim Saleh does not pay, or Mrs. Museveni does not pay. There are going to be a uniform tax system which applies to the president down to the last man. And under these conditions, actually the tax revenue is not going to decrease because people are not going to be trying to steal from government. They'll be encouraged to pay the right taxes at the right time because everybody pays the tax. And by creating an environment when people can have private enterprise, I'll actually be creating jobs. So the retirement age at 65 is a win-win situation. We shall be keeping the good people, which the country needs, who are very experienced, who have still got something to contribute, and they'll be there longer to teach the young people. So I don't think there will be unemployment, no. Next question, or is that the last one?
Yeah, I think that's going to be the last one. Why don't we, or unless Lawrence, did you have one that...
No, I think we can wrap up.
Okay. Yeah, let's go ahead and give the doctor just maybe 5 minutes here. Lawrence, you'll give us a short goodbye, and so will I, and then we'll round this out. So, doctor, go ahead with some of your final words here, and Lawrence and I will take a couple of minutes at the end, and we'll end the program.
Well, thank you very much for hosting me, and it has been a very exciting session. To all of you who have been listening, I want to encourage you not to stop here. Take this as the beginning. I want you to come out and do something. I think Ugandans are known for talking a lot and not doing enough. Now, I want to challenge you. Stop talking and start acting. If you really care about that country, and you rightly said so, there's nothing new I'm bringing to the table in terms of the wrongs of Mr. Museveni. Everybody knows that he's planted the country. You know all this already. But what I'm bringing to the table now is to provoke you into action. And not action next year, action now. And you can contribute, you can do something now in order to effect a change in Uganda. So I want to challenge all of you today. Lastly, I just want to put out the call again to all the different groups that if you're a small group in Bolivia, you're not going to take Museveni. If you're a small group, in Rwanda, you're not going to take Museveni. If all of us come together, and I've put up my head, you said, why do I think I'm going to be safe? No, I don't think I'm going to be safe. I know. By the time I took this step, I knew that I'm putting my head, my life on the line. Now, this is my commitment, and I'm not going to turn back. And therefore, you take the next step, and take it quickly too. I know Museveni is after me now, but I'm not scared of him. Now, it's up to you now. Do you want to move with me? You want to move forward? Do you want to get that country or not? If you do, please, let's come together, and this job can be done. Thank you.
Thank you. And Lawrence, I'll let you go ahead with a few words, and then I'll close us out.
Thank you, Dr. Kiyingi, for opening our eyes, giving us so much information. We appreciate it. We also appreciate your commitment, more so that that young lady who interjected the program is there and needs you more, but you decided to risk it all despite her being right there needing your wings of protection. I can't say much in terms of concluding this program. What I can say to Ugandans, we often ask questions, but maybe at times we, like in any other area, we ask the wrong question. Quite often we ask when people are not happy with us, what have I done wrong? Or what have I done to you? Maybe a little tweak of that question might point us to a new plane to work on. What haven't I done for you? Instead of what have I done to wrong you? What haven't I done to make you happy? Are we working towards making Uganda a happy place for all people from across the country? This is Chiwanuka Nsareko. So long.
Thank you so much for your closing words there. And Dr. Kiyingi from Voice Uganda Radio, from the Federal Alliance for Democracy and Development in Uganda, as well as Freedom and Unity Front, we thank you so much for the time that you have come and been on this program with us. Let me announce right now that this is not the doctor's only visit with us. Him and I have been in conversation that maybe he can come on Voice Uganda Radio twice a month to address issues. We have a lot of different platforms here on Voice Uganda Radio where we can deal with one issue at a time to give people the chance to really call in and really dive into certain areas that they may want to talk to the doctor about. You always ask, what are we doing? How are we moving forward? What are we doing to bring about change? We have done that loud and clear here at Voice Uganda Radio. Dr. Kiyingi is doing that very loud and clear, putting his life and his family's life on the line for all Ugandans, wherever you may be, in the diaspora community or in other parts of the world or in Uganda itself. We have a lot of work to do. You can sense that from what the doctor had to share today. This is not going to be an easy task. We're all going to have to get in. We're going to have to put our heads and our hearts and our minds together to liberate this country back to its wholeness. The Ugandan people have been hurting far too long, and we've been silenced far too long. Dr. Kiyingi has just shared about some of the people, his foot soldiers, being tortured, beaten, and now thrown in prison. We can no longer sit aside and allow these things to happen in the comfort of our homes and in the comfort of being entertained on these radio programs. We have to get to these programs. We have to give our donations. We have to help the doctor to move into the position that he wants to be in order for a better and a new Uganda, not just for his platform, but for all of us. We, the Ugandan people, need to stand behind him, and we need to support him. Like he said, during an election, if for some reason president decides through corruption or whatever reasons that the election he rigs it, then we need to throw the Constitution at him, and we need to stand behind it as a people, as a whole. I too plead with you, like the doctor just said, all these little organizations, get in, form with the other alliances that are out there. let's get bigger and stronger and better. One of the things I know that is causing the grounds in Uganda to shift is personally this. He has not been able to come in and break up the uniting and the unity in the diaspora community. And because of that, it has made us stronger than you would ever believe. So please join me tomorrow morning on Freedom at Hand here on Voice Uganda Radio, as we will talk a little more in depth about some of the things the doctor had to share here today, and a little bit about the 12 steps I told you we had to get to in order to get to a new Uganda. I've told you we've already accomplished 6 of them. I'm going to share what those 6 things are, and you come up with your own decisions. Doctor, thank you so much. I know you and I will be in conversation as we continue to put you out here on a platform a couple of times a month so that we can deal with the issues and get people comfortable with what you are doing, how you are moving forward, what you have already done in Uganda on behalf of the Ugandan people. Thank you so much again for being here, and thanks to all of you for joining us here on Voice Uganda Radio for this special program with our 2016 candidate running for president in Uganda against President Museveni in 2016. God bless you all. Have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you very much, and God bless you all.